Hello guys, today we will be talking about what if Naruto and Hinata were silent prodigies part 3. If you enjoy this video please like and subscribe. Now let begin. The next evening, Naruto was mildly excited as he packed for his newest mission. Guess all that whining paid off, he murmured as he zipped up his bag and set it next to his door. Earlier in the day, after yet another chore of catching that damn cat, he raised hell in front of the Hokage about his dissatisfaction with the mundane work given to him. He didn't actually expect the old man to give in to his childish demand, but that mattered little now. He descended his hidden passage to his subterranean chamber to procure a few high-end weapons he had been saving for such an occasion when he spotted the door to the new dungeon he built. "Oh, yeah, I got a prisoner now," he muttered under his breath as he thought about what to do with her. He could potentially be gone long enough for her to die of starvation. He sealed the last of the items in the tattoos on his back and on his new mask, while pulling out a large tin tray containing several dozen emergency rations. He then walked over to the tank of water he kept around and hoisted it over his shoulder before kicking the jail's chamber door open. "Rise and shine," he announced as he approached the seal-laden bars and set the food stores down. "How you feelin'?" She stirred from her cot. Her eyes were bloodshot, evidence that she had been crying hard for some time. I'm fine," she replied nervously. What is all that food and water?" he said nonchalantly. "Now, I've got a mission starting tomorrow, and I could be gone for a while. This," he tapped the metal box of rations with his foot, "should be enough for you to survive until then, assuming you don't scarf it all down in a day." "Understand," the young girl nodded as she slowly rose to her feet and uncomfortably shuffled over to the bars. "Why you're going to let me alive?" she asked with a tinge of hope in her voice. "As long as you're useful," he responded with all seriousness. "First off, is she your real name or a code name?" "Aye, it's my name." "How old are you?" "9. Geez," he thought. "They're getting younger and younger." He kept his mind to the task at hand. So far she was cooperative, but who knew how long that would last? "Who are you working for?" She hesitated for a moment. "See Commander Takemi." "Who's that?" "My commander." "Guess you aren't worth it," he stated abruptly as he turned on his heel and began to leave. "Wait," she called, frightened that her fate had been sealed. What about tea?" The foodie turned back to her when he reached the door and said, "You're going in circles now. If you want to eat, you'll cooperate with me every step of the way." But I'm telling why you the tea truth. Tea, that is who I take orders from." "Does Commander Takemi take orders from someone higher up?" "Why yes, but I don't. Who I don't know." She sniffled as tears began to well up again in her eyes. "I've never met him." Naruto's eyes narrowed behind his crimson visage. "So Takemi's an intermediary? Interesting," he thought before continuing with the interrogation. "Do you know his name?" She shook her head. "I've followed my brother around. He knows his name. You ever see this guy? Heard of a nickname or something?" Her head shook again. "No, I never came into much contact with everyone else at the main base." "Base? Where was that?" "I don't know." Her eyes began to well up again when she realized that she couldn't answer the genius's questions. I always stuck with my older brother." Uzumaki sighed, then peered at her eyes and examined her general demeanor. "I don't think she's lying," he concluded after a tense minute. "She seems broken for some reason. Mental issues, I'm sure. Overdependence on her brother, maybe?" He nodded lightly and strode up to the bars before grabbing the large tin tray and dumping its contents on the other side. He then propped the good-sized barrel of water against the cage, pulled a hose from the inside via the hole in its center, and dropped the hollow rubber tube on top of the scattered rations. "Turn around," he ordered when he finished the task. "What turn around?" he repeated, "and lean against the bars." She obeyed with nervousness pouring off her, and she shivered with fright when she felt a new set of cold iron clamping over her wrists. She heard the clinging of metal on metal before the restraining bonds along her arms suddenly went slack, and she could move said limbs. Pulling her arms over her head and bringing them back down again, she found the reason why. Her captor had removed the old constraints and replaced them with manacles with a chain that allowed for limited mobility. It was a step up from the previous arrangement. She turned around with surprise on her face. "What's this reward?" he answered simply before strolling to the chamber door. "You answered everything I wanted for now. Keep doing it and things'll be even more tolerable." With that, he closed the entrance off and the heavy locking bolt slid into place. "Thank you," she murmured as she handled a food pack and returned to her messy cot. The Hokage Tower, Saratobi was busy with paperwork as usual. He puffed on his pipe as he leaned back to give his bending spine a rest when he felt a presence enter the room. Ah, Kakashi, he stated as he blew a pristine stream of smoke, what brings you here? Pardon the intrusion, Lord Hokage, the copy ninja began, but I'm here regarding the mission you assigned me, and my team. What about it? He breathed in another mouthful from the burning tobacco. Is there another reason you assigned it besides getting Naruto to shut up? The old man's demeanor became serious as he understood what his subordinate was implying. To a degree, yes. You told me that Naruto acts unusual whenever left alone. Yes, sir. Do you think there is a possibility that he was responsible for that strange presence I felt a while ago? It is a possibility, but I can't say for certain. All I know is this: he seems more focused when no one else is bothering him, and he did learn how to perform the mass shadow clone technique all on his own. Considering his overall behavior, these small inconsistencies are extremely out of place. And I agree, Saratobi responded. Naturally, you are to keep your team out of trouble should any arise, but in the case that it does, watch him carefully. Ah, Kakashi stated as though he had forgotten something. That's another thing. What about half the time I watch Naruto, he's aware of it. Explain. Whenever he's performing a chore I watch him from afar. More often than not, though, he'll glance at me the moment my eye hits him. The Hokage sat back in his chair to take this new information in. I see, outside of that, he seems to stiffen up a little whenever I'm watching him from the shadows. That is news. The old man thought for a moment. All right, focus on Naruto during this upcoming mission and report back to me when you return. Understood. Dismissed. When the copy shinobi departed from the room, Saratobi stood from his chair and stood before the windows behind his desk. Naruto, he muttered under his breath, is there something you're not telling us, my boy? The next day, after the simple chores assigned to Jen and teammate were completed, and the squad was dismissed, Shino approached his teacher with a concern weighing on his mind. Teacher Kurenai, he addressed the woman. Shino, what is it? She returned, surprised that the boy was still around. I have been noticing that you seem to be watching Hinata a bit more closely than Kiba and I, he stated apathetically. Is there a reason for you to do so? She frowned inwardly. The bug user was incredibly intuitive. I'm just keeping an eye on her. You know how fragile she can be at times. He nodded with silent understanding before speaking again. When we passed your survival test, I planted a bug on each of you in case of an emergency. You did what? She said apprehensively. I apologize for not asking your permission to do so, but my intentions were purely cautionary. She sighed. Right, well, where are you going with this? He continued with his flat tone. The insect I planted on Hinata returned to me shortly after in a disoriented state. Upon examination, I determined that it had been exposed to a toxicant that is dangerous to my hive. I see, the Yui raised an eyebrow, and there are only a handful of substances that are capable of affecting my bugs in such a manner, and all of them are closely guarded secrets known only to my family and the Hokage. There is no viable reason that Hinata should know their chemical makeup. Kurenai nodded at the new information. I see. Thank you for telling me, Shino. I'll be sure to keep that in mind. May I inquire as to why you are watching her so closely? I told you she's very timid and shy. I want to be sure she doesn't lose all confidence in herself. Shino nodded after a moment, a gesture that told the female jonin that he didn't believe her. Thankfully, he let it go and began towards his home. View, she thought, he's certainly a lot smarter than he lets on. Now to find this damn bug and squish it. Danzo, Homura, and Kaharu sat patiently in one of the many underground chambers of the root headquarters. The lights were quite dim, emanating from a handful of candles situated on a table at the center of the room. The trio of seasoned veterans was there in accordance with the request of their mutual associate. The elite guards of the supposedly dead organization stood at perfect attention outside the door, ushering the chamber in absolute silence. After several minutes, Homura voiced his building annoyance. How much longer are we going to be made to wait? Have patience, Kaharu consoled. He's never shown his face before. A few extra minutes is well worth the opportunity. As another handful of minutes ticked by, the three suddenly sensed a presence in one of the corners. All heads turned to the absolute shadows to behold the newcomer. Gentlemen, a bored voice sounded from the darkness as its owner stepped into the muted light. And Miss, welcome, how did you get in here? Danzo inquired. He knew for a fact that the only entrance was guarded by his top agents, and the hooded stranger emerged from a corner opposite the door. The man wore a dark gray cloak that hid all his features save his face. His expression was flat, and the hair that poked out from under the hood merged into a brown tangle mess. The only discernible weapon he carried was an elegant yet slightly rusted sword strapped to his side. The blade appeared foreign, as its design was straight, and it appeared thicker than most katana. An arbitrary matter, the stranger replied. And you are? Kaharu stated. I am a subordinate of your associate who wishes to be unnamed for the time being. You may call me Sten. Shiori and Ichiro were out on patrol in the extensive hive hidden beneath Konoha per their creator's wishes. Hinata was busy maximizing her energy weapons efficiency and resiliency along with constructing some new weaponry that could be used against a Jashin follower. The reassembled Hyugas carefully made their way to the location of their mistress's previous battle in hopes of finding any evidence of the enemy's identities or affiliations. When they neared the scene, Ichiro suddenly stopped and signaled the female freak to do the same. What's up? Shiori inquired when she saw her companion's camera eye flexing and refocusing company. He replied, his nervous facial twitch accompanying his voice. 3 heat signatures. Got it, she said as she knelt forward, while simultaneously activating the multi-purpose device strapped to her back. The boxy machine had a wonderful variety of functions ranging from surveillance purposes to a massive self-destruct if need be. She reached back and unhooked a tube from a protruding disc, then plugged it into the port behind her ear. The circular piece of metal then began to flux, while reading the reverberations from the tunnel and eventually bringing the stranger's conversation in loud and clear inside her oral cavity. She hit the record button on the large machine, then listened intently. Who threw these? Then how the hell did we not hear it? The first shinobi returned. Don't know, but judging from all the burns it looks like there were quite a few of them. Hey, the third man interrupted. Check this out. A shuffling of feet filled the airwaves before he spoke again. It looks like another set of footprints. What kind of sandals are those? The first man asked. If they're sandals at all, they're not from around here. Think this other person was with them? The second ninja thought out loud. I doubt it. The third guy clarified. I think they were combatants as well. How do you figure our comrades' bodies had post-mortem burns and lacerations? Some kind of fighting went on after they were killed. Gotcha. An awkward silence settled in. Let's report this to Danzo. He'll be interested in this. Shiori cut the recording short and shut the device down with an explosive smile on her face. We got a name, she whispered excitedly to Ichiro. Let's take this back to the mistress. The reassembled Hyuga male nodded in agreement, and the freakish duo took off towards their headquarters. Naruto was having a great time with his new mission. As he laid his head to his pillow that night, he did a quick recap of the day, and his soul leapt for joy. It turned out that the man he and his team was tasked to protect, Tazuna, had lied about the severity of his situation. He had applied for protection against mere bandits and run-of-the-mill thieves, but in actuality was being pursued by a wealthy crooked businessman and a band of powerful missing ninjas. Uzumaki was slightly disappointed when Kakashi caught the shinobi that dug his toxic claws into the blonde's hand before the closet genius could counter the enemy. The boy considered such an attack his specialty, let an opponent get close enough to injure him and believe he had the upper hand, then strike him down with no hope of recovery. Naruto honestly didn't think about the enemy's weapon being poisoned, but it was inconsequential to him. He had an antidote for that particular contaminant in one of his seals. He was mildly pissed off by Sasuke's childish taunt, although he tried not to let it get to him. The hell does he know? He reasoned as he tried to sleep and failed. Not every strategy involves flashy moves. As he urged himself away from his inward ranting, he found that he was quite excited by the notion that the sword-wielding ninja, Zabuza, was still alive and had an acquaintance talented enough to fool his own teacher, albeit temporarily. When he lied still for a while longer, his body became no less tired. He listened carefully for his Uchiha teammate's steady breathing to be sure he was asleep. When he confirmed it, he silently leapt out the window and made his way into the nearby forest. Here goes nothing, he muttered as he put his hands together in the appropriate seals and brought a dozen copies of himself to life. He nodded to the shadow clones and they, fully understanding his intentions, transformed their appearances into that of his alter ego. All right guys, he stated quietly as the clones paid close attention, Zabuza's out of commission for about a week at most, so he's probably got a place to recuperate. He's also probably got friends other than those demon brothers. Find him or his flunkies and kill him. If you have the time, look for any evidence of Gato's location. Got it. When the identical masked copies nodded, he dismissed them and headed back to his room. As he climbed into his comforter, he wondered how his skills would hold up against any of the missing ninja subordinates. He knew that the clones couldn't take much of a hit, but whenever one died all its memory. The next few days brought on huge waves of excitement for Hinata. When her subordinates returned with a conversation giving a name, she was ecstatic, utterly overjoyed. As the days ticked on, she put her exploration of the tunnels on hold, while she set up monitoring equipment on a record level for her. She didn't know the exact location of the root headquarters at first, so she bugged damn near every inch of the Hokage tower until she could obtain some leads. Her work was beginning to pay off, since by now she had noticed some discrepancies in the arrival and departure of several individuals, Danzo included. She saw that the old Warhawk and several mysterious masked men that didn't seem to be ANMU members disappear completely in a certain area within the structure, so she was narrowing her search down with excellent results. She arrived at her hidden chamber after the day's missions with her squad, followed by the setup and relocation of equipment around her quarry. The moment the door was sealed behind her, she crashed onto the old couch she kept around whenever she felt the need to relax for a moment. As she let her mind ease into complacency, she thought about simpler things. Shiori and Ichiro will let me know when they see Danzo or those root guys, so I should take it easy for now. I kinda wish I could monitor the tunnels like I am the tower, but I don't have nearly enough equipment to do something like that on such a grand scale. She agonized mentally for a moment that she couldn't be in 1,000 places at once, then promptly let it go. On another note, what should I do about Kurenai? I can see the suspicion in her eyes, but I can't become an honest-to-God klutz. I'm already doing the best I can. Oh, what to do, mistress, Ichiro's voice called from his monitoring station. You might want to see this. The blue-haired genius leapt to her feet and was standing behind the reassembled Hyuga in less than a second, brimming with anticipation. She followed the man's outstretched arm to a monitor displaying a feed from one of the many hidden cameras within the Hokage building, and furrowed her brow with mild concern. "Who's that?" she asked aloud, even though she knew no answer could be provided. She stared at two individuals discussing something on screen. One was the familiar form of Danzo, while the other was extremely out of place by any standards. Through the graininess of the screen, she could somewhat make out the mystery man's demeanor. The unusual man wore a simple light blue business suit and dark violet tie. He carried a briefcase, something only a civilian would do, and wore dark polished shoes. She squinted and determined that he appeared to be middle-aged with a short crew cut and a prominent forehead. She cocked her head at the strange appearance, when the man suddenly turned his head and peered straight into the camera. "He sees it," she yelped. "Disable it. Cut off the connection." As the startled Ichiro moved at lightning speed to shut off the camera and render any traces back to the lab impossible, the screen suddenly changed into an up-close broadcast of the stranger. For the split second that his face was clear, Hinata noticed that a pair of dull blue-green eyes accompanied the apathy in his aging features. The monitor faded to black as the connection was finally cut. The young Hyuga genius let out a breath she didn't know she held and released her panicked iron grip from the table. She took several deep breaths to calm herself and issued a string of commands to her assembled underlings. "Ichiro, Shiori, drop what you're doing and run a full surveillance system diagnostic. If you see anything that's not ours, cut it off. Full permission is granted. No one must find out we're here." "Yes, mistress," both subordinates responded as they carried out their creator's orders as quickly as they could. "I'm going back home in case the shit hits the fan," she continued as she slipped into her shy girl clothes and made for the door. "If anyone other than me comes in, activate the master self-destruct and get yourselves to the safe house." She sprinted to a standalone console that had obvious importance and entered a series of codes before unlocking a blaring red switch cover, revealing the ominous crimson button that would assuredly burn anything in her secret chamber. "And make sure you guys are safe, all right?" she added with subdued softness. "Yes, mistress," they affirmed simultaneously with wide eyes, their attention going everywhere at once. They noted that the young girl exited the lab and continued their checkup unimpeded for the remainder. Naruto was getting a headache towards the end of the week. He had been training nonstop with Sasuke on the tree climbing exercise. "Gah, why do I have to waste time doing this?" he whined mentally before the logical part of his brain reminded him. "Oh right, I'm supposed to be an idiot. Besides, if I disappeared with my clones, things would look bad for me. Other than that, I don't think Kakashi would teach us anything new, even if we ace this little trial." As the blonde ran up the tree for the millionth time and purposely botched his control, his newest batch of clones was steadily closing in on what he believed to be Zabuza's hideout. For the past week, the shadow clones had been searching diligently, eliminating large areas in their search for the missing ninja and his crew. The genius knew time was running out, and the thought dominated the minds of his copies, thus causing them to continue their renewed exploration with extreme vigor. When the Uzumaki aimed for the scarred tree for the millionth and one time, he brought his foot down and was suddenly aware of an intruding presence. He glanced to the side and saw a hooded figure looming in an intensely dark shadow. "Screw this," he thought as he moved his arm to unseal his ninjato when he was halted by the sound of the Uchiha's voice. "Hey, loser," the brooding boy droned, "what are you doing?" "What?" He returned as he spun on his heel before glancing back. When he saw that the stranger was no longer there, he completed his movement by scratching the back of his head and laughing. I was just thinking how frustrating this tree climbing thing is. Weirdo, Sasuke muttered before resuming his training. Who was that? Naruto wondered, ignoring the prick's comment. More importantly, where did he go in a room unknown to any of the natives of Konoha? 4 silhouettes dwelled in its deep arcing shadows. Any news on our new guests? Yes, sir, the hooded man replied. Naruto Uzumaki is operating separately from an assigned mission in the Land of Waves. He seems to be searching for the missing ninja known as Zabuzumamachi.ic. And you, I believe the other individual to be a Hinata Hyuga, the stranger in the business suit explained with a slow, raspy voice that paused at awkward intervals. She seems to possess a rather extensive knowledge of technology. Good, good. Let's keep this from our mutual associates, shall we?